Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. When you're turning bowls, you want a good base or foot on the bowl. Now, gone are the days when you could leave screw holes in the bottom and just sand it off. That's no longer acceptable. But there are alternatives. One is a Jamb Chuck where you fit it really tight and it holds. And it can be done, but it takes, you always got to use some wood for the Jamb Chuck. Another is to use a Jamb Chuck where you hold it in place with the tailstock. The problem with that is then you always have a little nub in the middle that you finally want to turn off. And that works too. Another alternative is a Longworth chuck, and I'll make one of those in the future, but I use one in my shop already for other purposes. This alternative is a set of homemade coal jaws. Now if you look at them in the various catalogs, they're quite expensive, but for the cost of some T-nuts that I got from McMaster Carr, buy them in bulk, they're a lot less expensive than at your hardware store. A dowel for the posts that hold the bowl, and this is just a hardware store variety, and some vinyl tubing to be the cushion on the posts, and of course some bolts for the posts in the middle. Then don't use the screws that come with your jaws already. Get some exactly the same size but a little bit longer, because the wood that you're likely to use will be thicker than your jaws. For these, every major city has a bolt and screw place. Take your old ones in, say, hey, I want the exact same thing, 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch longer, and they'll give it to you, and they're very, very inexpensive. Then cut yourself a piece of plywood. Use the good stuff, the Baltic birch or Finnish birch, the one that doesn't have any voids. Cut it to the size you want. I'm not going to give any dimensions because everybody's size preference and jaw configuration may vary. Cut it to the size and I'll show you how to do it. Then use these jaws to hold your bowl so that you can finish turning the foot. Let's make our own coal jaws.
To begin, I've cut the plywood perfectly square and made lines dividing the area into quarters for the jaws. Don't cut the plywood round yet. I've also marked 45-degree lines indicating where the bolt holes will be. Then I've laid out the metal jaws on the wood. While you can lay them out in any direction, I want them so that I can use the table saw fence to cut the jaws apart later. Now I've marked the bolt holes. After removing the jaws, I've center punched each bolt hole to guide the drill bit. If you don't have a punch, use an awl or even a nail. If you do not center punch, the drill bit will wander off target. I'd prefer drilling the holes with a drill press, but this will not fit mine. So I'll use my hand drill with a brad point bit sized to the bolts that fit my chuck. For this depth, the error is not significant. Now to lay out the posts that hold the timber. After testing the fit by bolting the plywood to the chuck, I needed to lay out lines at 22.5 degrees. Going back to high school geometry, I divided each angle in half. To review how to divide an angle, 1. Strike an arc on both legs equal distance from the center. With a compass a little wider than half the distance between the strike marks, then strike an arc from the mark on each leg, and these arcs need to intersect. An arc further from the center will provide more accuracy. And 3rd, draw a line from the center through the intersection of the last arc. In my case, I worked all the angle divisions at once. While I could have marked concentric circles with a protractor, I wanted to use the lathe to ensure they would be centered on the lathe's center. So I mounted the plywood onto the chuck. And of course the plywood would not fit my lathe. The plywood corners prevented the plywood from rotating. Since I still did not want to round off the plywood, I cut off just enough of the corners to allow the plywood to rotate on the lathe. Now to the lathe. I marked off 1-inch increments, then mounted the chuck with the plywood back on the lathe to mark concentric circles for the holding posts and for the final shape of the jaws. Then I removed the bolts to free the plywood. Finally, I could cut the jaws apart on the table saw against the fence. This is why I did not want to shape the jaws earlier, then shape the jaws on the bandsaw. Now I could center punch all the intersections for posts. Now that the jaw pieces are smaller, I can use the drill press to drill all the holes. I'm also drilling holes at the 45-degree lines. First, I'm using a small drill bit. All I want is a small hole to mark the position on the opposite side. With a large hole, the next step would be more difficult due to the bit wandering. Next, I'll drill a very shallow hole with a Forstner bit, just deep enough for the flange on the T-nuts. Finally, drill all holes sized for the bolts, and countersink the hole for the jaw mounting bolts. Now it's time to set the T-nuts in place with epoxy. To prevent epoxy from getting on threads, I've covered both sides of the T-nut with small sticky dots. I recruited some help to spread epoxy, hammer the T-nuts in place, and clean up. With so many to set, 5-minute epoxy is a tough deadline. We did all the gluing in 5 batches. My initial plan for the posts was to mount the dowel on the lathe, drill a center hole, cut the vinyl cover, and part off the posts. This quickly evolved to leaving the cutting of the vinyl covers to later. A little CA glue locks the vinyl in place. A better plan was to cut the vinyl on the bandsaw. Even that had its problems. Next time, I may try to first jam on as much vinyl onto a dowel as possible, chop it to length on a chop saw, then drill the center hole on the lathe. We'll see. After mounting the posts, it's ready to use. Be sure to run at a lower speed. These jaws are wood, not metal, so be safe. Between the posts at 1-inch intervals and the travel of the chuck, this can hold most of my large bowls. When I start making a lot of maximum size bowls, I'll make another set of jaws. I still need to make a Longworth chuck and directly compare the two. I'm sure each will have its own advantages and disadvantages. This set of jaws will handle most of the bowls I'm inclined to make. But if I need a bigger one, I know how to make it. Meanwhile, this one will do very nicely without having too much extra wood in the way. Please click the like button on this video and subscribe to both my website and YouTube channel. Always wear your face shield. You can't grab it just before something hits you in the face. Until next time, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns.